What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're not going to be doing a demo today. We're going to be talking about systems. I know I talk about my system a lot because it's my channel and I could talk about my system if I want. Now I'm playing with you guys. We're going to talk about your ultimate fantasy system, regardless of price. If you could put together your ultimate fantasy system, what would it be? And before we get to talking about that, please give this video a like, subscribe, share. I've been seeing the stats. You guys are liking, you guys are subscribing and sharing. Man, I absolutely appreciate that, man, more than you guys know. I thank you so very much. But anyway, let's talk about it. So I'll start with my ultimate dream system. I've been doing car audio for 29 years. I got started in 1994. The first system I heard gave me a headache for the entire day. Now, I heard some systems in the neighborhood bumping up and down the streets, but I never sat in a car and actually heard a system with subwoofers. I grew up in the era where people were using house speakers, put them in the trunk. They didn't fit, they didn't look good, they didn't even sound good, to be honest. It was just louder than your factory system. But that's what I grew up on. So hearing those cars bumping up and down the street, then you start hearing better systems up and down the street. You're like, okay, this is car audio, but I don't know nothing about it. I'm just used to house systems. Anyway, I go off to school and it's this one guy and he's just a man around there with car audio. And I'm like, I don't even care. But I'm like, let me see what all the hype is. And he's like, yeah, I'll let you guys check out my system if you want. I'm like, I'm used to hearing systems in the hood. I never heard one in person inside. Let me check it out. I'm sitting in this guy's car. He has two Fosgate Punch 10s, the Punch Power DVC 10s, and he has them in bass tubes, man. Bass tubes. And he's got a Punch 400 or something like that. That's not even a lot of power, but back then for me, never experiencing it, it was, right? So this dude turns on his system and I'm sitting in the back seat and he turns and he's got a tape deck. That's that's how old it was. He had a tape deck and he's playing this song Bone Thugs and Harmony, For the Love of Money, and the bass drops and his back seat is flapping from all the wind that those subs are pushing out through the bass tubes. I'm sitting there like, oh my God. My buddy's sitting there like, oh my God. He jumps out the car. I'm sitting there like, I jump partially out and then I jump back in to get another taste of it, glutton for punishment, I guess. Get a taste of it. And I'm like, oh man, I got the car. My head was bumping, man. It was just pounding for the whole day. I got that demo in the morning. It literally was pumping. My brain was throbbing until the night. It was that loud for me at the time. So, a couple of months go by and I'm like, yo, let me get into car audio, get into this, go to some shows, get some demos, sit in the Serwin Vega stroker van with the 12, 15-inch strokers and the linear power big slabs of cement looking type plate amplifiers. That thing was so loud. Got a demo. It was a 10-second demo. The first 5 seconds, low notes. The woofers are just literally stroking. And I'm like, this ain't so bad. And he's like, wait. He gives me these headphones and he plays like a 50, 60, 40, 50, 60 hertz tone. And he burps. It's like, and I'm like, oh. And I'm sitting there like that. And the dashboard literally falls in my lap. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I jump out the van and I got my hands on my knees and I'm trembling. Everybody's around me laughing. I'm like, I'm nauseous. And I'm like, I got to have it. I got to have it. And that was my introduction, my real introduction into car audio. That's when I was like, I got to compete. I got to go to more shows. I got to do this. So I started doing that, DB drag and all that. You guys seen the pictures. I'll post more. That was my system. It was basic, but it was loud. Won a lot of trophies, all that. After I graduated past DB drag doing SPL competitions, I started doing SoundQ, but just for me. It wasn't for competition. I still don't compete SoundQ, but I wanted a good sounding system because I grew past the SPL system. So with all that being said, my fantasy system, thankfully, I've actually had the opportunity to have my fantasy systems. My current system now, I'll explain again for those who haven't seen my channel, but my previous fantasy system, it was a toss-up between ADS, Cliff Designs, and maybe MB Court. at the time. Those were my options. I heard the ADS demo car. It was an Acura Legend, I believe, and that thing sounded magical. And it wasn't even time aligned. I got a demo sitting in the passenger seat, and oh man, I think he had horn-loaded compression drivers under the dash, some ADS 6.5s, rear fill, all that, infinite baffle, this big 30-band EQ that he would manually adjust. It was sweet, man. And matter of fact, it might have been a 2-seat tune because it did sound like everything was coming from the dash. It was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. So ADS was a consideration, but at the time I didn't have the money for ADS. So then you take on Cliff Designs. I think I heard maybe one car with Cliff Designs, but I didn't have access to it, even though the shop I worked at, it was kind of bootleg, so we didn't have access to good speakers like that. Then there's MB Court. Everybody in the neighborhood had MB Court. MB Court was the speaker to have. And I was this close to getting some MB Court for myself. Went to CES at the time, heard the MB Court demo vehicles, like, I'm sold, I'm getting MB Court, because my only other options were Kicker, False Gate, Kenwood speakers, Pioneer, and those were cool, but I'm a competitive person. I like to have the good stuff, right? So I'm this close to getting MB Court, and we're about to leave CES, and I see this Diamond Audio truck. I'm like, what's Diamond Audio? Go sit in the Diamond Audio truck, and I'm like, yo, like, that is it. I am sold. I'm gonna find Diamond. Got back home, my local shops, only one shop had Diamond. Mad expensive. I'm like, man, but it's like, I gotta have it. Once I got a taste of it, I can't go back. I gotta have it. So back then, my fantasy system, which I actually had, was Diamond Audio Hex components. It was a 3-way set that I made, 6.5 in the door, 4-inch in the door, and tweeters in the door. It wasn't time aligned or anything like that. I didn't even know about DSPs or time alignment back then. So it wasn't time aligned, but it sounded really good. And I had Diamond Audio 6x9s in the back for rear fill. Rear fill ran off the head unit just like I do now, but everything else was run off of amplifiers. I had an Audison LRX4 for my front stage. If I'm not mistaken, it was a mixture of active and passive. The passive part was the 6.5 with the tweeter, because the Diamond Audio Hex came as a component, and then the other channels on the LRX4 I used for the 4-inch mids to make myself a 3-way. So it wasn't time aligned, but it was active and passive combined. And then I had an Audio Control 4.1 as my front EQ, and an Audio Control EQX or EQL, one of those, as my rear equalizer. And it was a nightmare to tune because it was mounted in the back. So I would get in the car, sit and listen, hop out, go adjust, come back and forth for hours, man. I get that dead ear. I have to step away for a couple of minutes, let my ears calm down, get back in the car, back and forth. Then I finally got it sounding really sweet. My amplifier for my subs, I had a single Crossfire BMF 15 in a floor-mounted I forget what it's called, just in a spare tire well. It wasn't really infinite baffle, but it was in a spare tire well, 15-inch 15-inch Crossfire BMF in the false floor, that's what it was called, false floor, a bunch of Dynamat in the spare tire well so it wouldn't vibrate and rattle, and that was being pushed off a PPI 2160, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look it up and be sure, but I think it was a PPI 2160, and that was my ultimate system. And when I was giving demos, people were loving my sound, man. It was right. That system was on point. I stepped away from car audio, as a lot of you know, and I sold all that stuff, man, because, like, if I do something, I either go all the way in or I'm all the way out. And at the time, I was making the decision to be all the way out, so I sold my strokers. I want to throw up. I sold my strokers, I sold my diamonds, I sold my Audison amp, I sold my PPI amp, my EQs, my processors, my head unit. Everything had to go. Oh, and my head unit was the Sony CDX-C90. It was the blue one, the Premier, like the best unit they made. It was a sweet system. I was very happy with that system, loved everything about it. But like I said, I stepped away and I sold everything. Done. Fast forward to today, 2023. I think I've said in many videos before, my car audio mentor told me Morel made the best speakers he had ever heard. And this is not a promo for Morel, there's a lot of other great speakers. I don't work for Morel or anything like that, not sponsored by them. But I decided 20 years later to listen to my mentor and, like, you know what, let me give these Morel speakers a try. And I started with the Morel Maximo 6 component with the Maximo Coax 6 for rear fill. And I was immediately blown away. Like, yo, This is ridiculous. Like, I gotta have it. But again, the competitive person I am, not competing with anybody but myself, I wanted to see what the next level of Morel is, because it's like, if the Maximo sounds as good, why are these other speakers so much more expensive, and do they sound that much better? Yes, they do. Then I went to the Morel hybrids. Those were good. I'm like, yo, went to a SQ show, heard the Morel SQ Mazda, and he had all the Morel's best that they have to offer. Their Piccolo tweeters, their SW9 mids in the doors, the MM3s, all that. And I'm like, I'm blown away, and I can't have anything less. I gotta have it. I gotta have it. So now, today, my current fantasy system, almost fantasy, almost complete. I know, almost complete fantasy system is Morel Elate Carbon tweeters. I don't hear that much of a significant difference between the Piccolo tweeters and the Elate Carbon, so I'm good. I saved myself $100 and something getting the Elate Carbon tweeters, the MM3, sweet mids, and then I have Image Dynamics 8s in the doors for now. Yeah, I know I've been saying that I have a surprise for you guys. I'm working on changing those, I mean, the secret's out. I'm working on changing those. Not 100% sure what I'm going to get yet, but I'll keep that as a surprise. But I'm working on changing that. And then I have the Morel Maximo Ultra Maximo Ultra 602HE components for rear fill in the door. They're running off my head unit, and I'll link that video in case you haven't seen it. And then my sub in the back is a Stereo Integrity SQL12. My amplifiers are Zapco ST4XSQ and the Zapco 150.2LX. My sub amp is the Kicker CXA 800.1, and it's pushing that SQL, and there's plenty of power for it. And then my DSP is the Arc Audio PS8 Pro that my boy gave to me. That was an upgrade from the Dayton Audio that I was using. I was happy with the Dayton, but once I got a taste of that Arc, yeah, it made a huge difference. And then all my music is being played through a FiO M11S. That's almost my fantasy system. If there's anything I would change, it would be the doors. I'm going to change my 8-inch drivers in the doors. I'm not going to say which ones yet, but it would be some 8-inch drivers. Matter of fact, let's just stop with the secrets. It's a toss-up between 3 speakers. It's going to be either Morel MW9, or it's going to be Steg SQ8, or it's going to be Stereo Integrity TM8s. I'm still debating, still deciding, doing some research. I know what I'm going to get. You guys don't. I'll save that for another video. But my ultimate fantasy system today, right now, would be Elate Carbon Alto tweeters, which I have. Check that off. Morel MM3 Carbon 3.5s. Check that off. 8-inch drivers. We'll see. That's a question mark. Rear fill Morel Maximo Ultra 602HE component. Check that off. Subwoofer. I have a Stereo Integrity SQL12, but my ultimate fantasy sub would probably still be a JL12 or 13W7. Not that it would necessarily sound better than the SQL12, but just for fantasy purposes, it would be a JL12W7 or 13W7 in the back. Amplifiers, I would go with the Zapco AP series, all the gold ones, front and back. I'll probably do a 6-channel Zapco AP to run my 3-piece set up front. And then my sub amp, I'll probably stay with the Kicker. I like the Kicker amp. I don't have no issues with it at all. And then my processor, I like the Arc Audio DSP. Would I do a Helix just because? Maybe. I don't know. Or another amplifier consideration would be the Helix C4. Man, that's a sweet looking amplifier. Everything about it says yes, except for the price. So I wouldn't necessarily do that, but that would be my ultimate system. Now, I've talked enough. I've talked a lot through this, and I want to hear you guys' thought. It's just a conversation. I want to hear, we all chat in the comments a lot. I want to know what you guys are thinking would be your ultimate fantasy system. So just before I end this, as a recap, really quick, my ultimate fantasy system right now, if money was not an issue, would be Morel Elate Carbon Alto tweeters, which I have. Check that off. Morel Elate Carbon MM3 3.5s in the dash. I have. Check that off. Some 8-inch driver, mystery driver for now. Check that off with a question mark. 6.5 coaxes component, HO2s, 602HEs. Yeah, that's it. Check that off. Maybe a 13W7 in the back or 12W7. Maybe, but I would never pay that price, and the SQL12 is right. But still, check that off as a fantasy sub. Amplifiers, it'll be either the Helix C4 for my mids and high components up front with another C2, I guess, to run the 8-inch drivers, and then or the Zapco AP 150.6 amplifier to run my 3-way set up front, and then my sub amp will probably remain a kicker. I can't think of any other sub amp that I would want to use. False gate, kicker, they're all on the same level to me at this point, so I'll probably stay with the kicker. And that would be it, man. That would be my ultimate fantasy system. But enough. Oh, and then probably the Helix DSP, just because, not that I think it's better than the Arc, but just for argument's sake, just for conversation's sake, rather, Helix DSP, and that would be it. So that's my ultimate fantasy system. What is yours? Let's talk about it. Stay tuned.